What if the person you love most, your own daughter, drifts away because of a choice you made? This is my story. The story of Emma, my little girl, once full of light and laughter, and how I said no to her happiness. I thought I was protecting her, giving her the life she deserved. But instead, I pushed her into silence and pain. In this video, I'll take you through the moments I missed, the mistakes I made, and the hope I almost lost forever. You'll hear things no one ever told me, secrets about Emma's struggles, a man named Noah who never gave up on her, and the moment I realized what true love really means. Stay with me till the end, because this story is not just about regret, it's about redemption, forgiveness, and learning to listen to the heart. Let's begin. They say daughters are like butterflies, delicate, full of light, and free to dance wherever the wind takes them. Emma was exactly that. From the moment she first opened her bright eyes, she filled our home with a kind of joy that was impossible to ignore. I remember those early years in Seattle like a favorite photograph, sharp, warm, and full of life. Emma was a whirlwind of energy, always moving, always smiling. She had this incredible spark, the kind that made people stop and watch. At school, she wasn't just smart, she was a genius in her own quiet way. Teachers would praise her for her sharp mind and her creative spirit, especially when she painted. Her artwork wasn't just pretty pictures, it told stories, emotions that even a child her age couldn't fully explain. And then there was her laughter, that unmistakable sound that filled the room and made you feel like everything was going to be okay. Seattle's rain never dampened her spirit. On sunny days, she'd run barefoot across our backyard, chasing butterflies or simply spinning until she was dizzy and breathless with happiness. She was popular, too, not the kind of popularity that made her arrogant, but the kind that came from kindness. She had friends from all walks of life, and everyone loved her because she was genuine, open, and full of warmth. One summer afternoon at Pike Place Market, I watched her run up to a street musician playing the violin. She was only 11, but without hesitation, she dropped her entire week's allowance into his open case and said, "Please don't stop playing. You make the world beautiful." That moment, so pure and full of hope, still stays with me. It showed exactly who Emma was, fearless, heart first, and filled with a brightness that could light up any dark corner. But that light began to fade the day her mother fell ill. It started quietly, a cough here, a fatigue there. We all thought she'd get better. Doctors told us to hope, and so we did, with every ounce of strength we had. But cancer is a cruel thief. It stole her from us faster than we were ready for. Less than a year after the diagnosis, Emma's mother was gone. I thought Emma would be strong. She had always been. But losing her mother wasn't something a child's heart was prepared to carry. The laughter stopped. The light dimmed. The butterflies no longer danced. Emma retreated into herself, her vibrant world shrinking day by day. She stopped smiling. At first, it was subtle, a hesitation, a quiet moment alone. Then she began to avoid her friends, stopped going to the places she loved. The girl who once sang in the shower and performed for the family disappeared behind a wall I couldn't climb. Days turned into weeks, and those weeks into months of silence. She locked herself away, physically and emotionally. I tried everything I could think of, patience, space, gentle words, prayers whispered into the dark. I hoped time would heal what pain had broken. But no matter what I did, Emma stayed trapped in that silence. The daughter I had known, my little butterfly, was gone. And I was left standing helpless, watching the light in her eyes fade more each day. After those long years of silence and shadows, Emma left Seattle and went to college at the University of Oregon. It was a fresh start, far from the memories and the pain that weighed her down at home. I hoped the change of scenery might give her a chance to breathe again, to find even a small piece of herself buried beneath all that sorrow. That's when she met Noah. Noah was nothing like the people I had imagined for Emma. He was from Bend, a small town in Oregon, quiet and unassuming, with long hair that fell around his face and a gentle way about him that didn't scream for attention. He worked part-time at a bookstore, and he had this calm, patient spirit that seemed to understand things without needing words. When Emma talked about him on the phone, I could hear something different in her voice, a softness, a spark I hadn't heard in years. "He listens, Dad," she said one afternoon. "Not like anyone else. He doesn't judge me or rush me. With him, I feel alive again." It was hard for me to accept at first. I was scared, I admit it. I wanted to protect her, and Noah didn't fit the picture I had painted in my mind. He wasn't wealthy or ambitious in the traditional way, and I worried he couldn't give Emma the stability she deserved. But more than that, I was afraid to see her happy after so much pain. It felt like opening a wound that might never truly heal. Still, as days passed, I noticed the change in Emma. Her voice was lighter when she called. She started talking about plans for the future, dreams I hadn't heard in a long time. The girl who had disappeared after her mother's death was beginning to find her way back. But beneath that hope, there was tension, between what I thought was right and what Emma's heart wanted. I wanted to believe Noah was good for her, but my fears held me back. And Emma, caught between her father's doubts and her own feelings, found herself lost once again. After those long, heavy years of silence and shadows, Emma finally left Seattle behind and started her college journey at the University of Oregon. I remember watching her pack her bags, her face still pale and her eyes still carrying that weight I wished I could lift. It felt like sending a fragile bird out into a storm, hoping it would find a place to rest. I prayed that a change of scenery might give her a chance to breathe again, to find even a small piece of herself that the pain hadn't crushed. Then, she met Noah. Noah was unlike anyone I had ever imagined for my daughter. From Bend, Oregon, a quiet small town, he had this unassuming presence, long, unruly hair falling over kind eyes, a gentle smile that didn't try too hard. He worked part-time at a local bookstore, surrounded by stories and worlds far from the harsh realities Emma had endured. There was something about his calm patience, his steady kindness, that seemed to draw Emma out of her shell, bit by bit. I remember the first time Emma called me and mentioned him. Her voice, for the first time in years, held a softness I hadn't heard since before her mother died. "Dad," she said hesitantly, "Noah, he listens. Not like anyone else ever has. He doesn't rush me or try to fix me. With him, I feel alive again." There was a tremble in her words, like she was afraid to hope but desperate to hold on to it. That hope frightened me. Because Noah wasn't what I had pictured for Emma. He wasn't a high-powered professional with a steady income or impressive status. He was a simple man from a small town, working in a bookstore, with a quiet life that seemed worlds away from the future I wanted for my daughter. I worried he couldn't protect her, that he might not be enough for her in the long run. I feared that if I let Emma believe in Noah, she might get hurt all over again. But more than fear for his background, I was scared of seeing Emma happy. It was easier to imagine her lost in sorrow than to risk her heart breaking again. I thought, if I let her fly too close to the sun, she might fall and shatter into pieces I wouldn't be able to put back together. Still, I couldn't deny the change Noah brought into her life. The girl who had once disappeared into silence and shadow started to return. Her voice on the phone was lighter, filled with dreams and plans that she hadn't dared to speak aloud in years. She laughed sometimes, a soft laugh that made my chest ache with hope and guilt all at once. The Emma I knew, bright, bold, fearless, was slowly coming back. But this new light also deepened the shadows between us. I tried to mask my doubts, but Emma could see through them. She was caught in the middle, wanting to trust her father's judgment but pulled by the hope Noah gave her. It created a quiet tension in every conversation we had. I wanted to protect her, to guide her to what I believed was right, but I was also afraid of pushing her away. The distance grew. Emma became quieter again, retreating behind a wall I had helped build without realizing it. The girl who once told me, "Dad, I feel alive again," stopped speaking of Noah altogether. And with every word left unsaid, the light in her eyes dimmed once more. I was left standing on the edge of hope and fear, watching my daughter struggle to hold on to the wings I was too afraid to let her spread. When Emma first told me about Noah, I wanted to believe in him. I truly did. For her sake, for the hope that maybe, just maybe, she was finding her way back from that dark place. But deep down, a knot of fear twisted in my chest. Noah was from Bend, a small town far from the life I'd imagined for my daughter. He worked part-time in a bookstore. No steady career, no grand ambitions that could promise Emma the kind of future she deserved. To me, that wasn't enough. One evening, I sat her down in the living room. The air felt heavy, and I could see the flicker of hope still lingering in her eyes. But I had made up my mind. "Emma," I began, voice steady but soft, "I've been thinking a lot about Noah. And I want you to know, it's not because I don't care about who you love, but I worry. You deserve more than uncertainty. You need someone who can give you security, a steady job, respect, a future you can count on." Her eyes filled with tears, and she swallowed hard, but she tried to be strong. "Dad, Noah makes me happy. He's kind, and he listens. I feel alive when I'm with him." I shook my head, trying to hold back my own tears. "I'm not saying this to hurt you, Emma. I want to protect you. Life isn't easy, and I can't watch you get hurt again." She looked away, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't want to get hurt. But I'm tired of feeling invisible." That moment broke something between us. I saw her heart crack, and for a second, I wished I could take it all back. But I didn't. After that conversation, Emma grew quieter than ever. The phone calls stopped. The messages went unanswered. The spark I had seen in her eyes after she met Noah vanished again, replaced by a silence heavier than before. Our home, once filled with cautious hope, was now cold and empty. Weeks passed, and the distance between us stretched wider. I tried to reach her, to understand where I had gone wrong, but Emma pulled away like a shadow slipping into the night. The pain was silent, but it was there, like a slow ache that wouldn't fade. Then Ryan came into the picture. He was everything I had hoped for, an engineer from Boise, Idaho, with a solid job, a good family, and the kind of stability I thought Emma needed. When he asked for her hand, I said yes without hesitation. One afternoon, I told Emma, "Ryan can give you the life you deserve, steady, reliable, safe. He can give you what Noah can't." She nodded slowly, her face unreadable. "If that's what you want, Dad." Those words pierced me harder than any anger or argument ever could. I wanted to believe Emma was choosing this for herself. But deep down, I knew she was giving up pieces of her heart to keep me happy. The day of the wedding arrived with an eerie calmness. Emma wore her mother's dress, the same one she had dreamed of wearing when she was young and full of hope. But as she walked down the aisle, I saw the weight in her eyes, the quiet surrender in her steps. During the reception, I pulled her aside. "Are you sure this is what you want?" I asked, voice trembling. She looked up, tears brimming. "I want you to be proud of me, Dad. I want you to love me." I pulled her close, feeling the truth between us, love tangled with pain, hope suffocated by fear. And in that moment, I realized that my refusal to trust her heart had cost us both more than I could have imagined. The morning of the wedding dawned cold and gray, Seattle's usual mist clinging to the air like a silent witness to the day's heavy weight. Emma stood before the mirror in our old family home, her fingers trembling slightly as she touched the delicate lace of her mother's wedding dress. The dress was beautiful, soft ivory, embroidered with tiny pearls and intricate patterns, but on Emma, it seemed almost like a costume, a fragile shell hiding the storm beneath. Her hair was pulled back neatly, her makeup subtle, but there was a stillness about her that made her seem less like the vibrant girl I had known and more like a fragile statue, carved and placed carefully for others to admire but never truly alive. The bright spark that once lit up her eyes, the mischievous smile that could melt any room, had been replaced by a quiet resignation. She barely spoke that morning. When I tried to reach out, she offered only faint nods or silent glances. I wanted to tell her it was going to be okay, that this new life would bring her peace, but my voice caught in my throat. How could I lie to her now, when I was the one who had taken her hopes and dreams and tucked them away in a drawer marked impossible? The church was filled with friends and family, faces glowing with happiness and celebration. But all I could see was Emma walking slowly down the aisle, her steps measured and hesitant. She held a bouquet of white lilies, her fingers barely wrapping around the stems, as if she was holding on to something just to keep from slipping away. When she reached Ryan, her new husband, she looked at him with a calm that didn't quite reach her eyes. Ryan smiled, steady and sure, but there was no warmth between them, no spark, no quiet understanding. I watched as they exchanged vows, words heavy with promises that neither one of them truly felt in that moment. The photographer captured the smiles, the rings, the embraces, but behind the scenes, Emma's heart was breaking silently. She stood tall and composed, but her soul was folding inward, retreating from a future she hadn't chosen for herself. After the ceremony, during the reception, I found her alone on the veranda. The cool breeze tugged gently at the hem of her dress, but she didn't notice. Her eyes stared into the distance, as if searching for something lost long ago. "Emma," I whispered, stepping closer, "are you all right?" She turned to me, her face streaked with tears she hadn't bothered to wipe away. "I'm just tired, Dad," she said softly. "Tired of pretending." I reached out to hold her hand, feeling the fragile pulse beneath her skin. "You don't have to pretend with me." She shook her head, a sad smile flickering. "I have to, for now. For you." That night, as the celebration faded and the house grew quiet, I watched Emma retreat into herself like a butterfly folding its wings. The laughter and light that had once filled her days dimmed again, swallowed by the shadows of duty and sacrifice. In the days that followed, the reality of her marriage settled in like a heavy fog. The vibrant girl who had once dreamed of painting, singing, and loving freely was slowly fading away, replaced by a woman bound by expectations she never wanted. And I was left to wonder if my decision to say no to Noah had been the choice that stole my daughter's light forever. Emma moved to Austin with Ryan just a week after the wedding. She didn't say much as she packed. Just folded her clothes, wrapped up her art supplies, and zipped her suitcase like she was erasing something. I remember offering to drive her to the airport, but she declined, saying Ryan had it covered. That stung more than I let on. As I stood in the doorway watching her leave, I wanted to call out, to tell her she didn't have to go, that we could figure something out together. But I stayed quiet. I had told myself this was the right thing, that she was safe, that she was starting her life with a responsible, steady man. But something didn't feel right. There was no joy in her departure. Just silence. For the first few months, she called every couple of weeks. Short conversations, always with the same lines. "I'm okay, Dad. We're settling in. Yeah, work is fine. Ryan's working a lot. No, I haven't made many friends yet." Her voice was always polite, always calm, but I could hear something missing. That spark, that light in her tone that used to come naturally, it was gone. At first, I told myself I was overthinking it. Maybe she just needed time to adjust. Austin was a big change, after all. But the calls started getting less frequent. One every month, then every 2. And when she did call, her voice was off. Distant. As though she was choosing her words carefully, like someone might be listening. And sometimes, right in the middle of a sentence, she'd pause. Like her breath caught in her throat. One time, I asked her if she was okay, really okay. She went quiet for a long moment, then answered with a soft, "Yeah, of course I am," and quickly changed the subject. That was the night I couldn't sleep. What I didn't know, what she kept from me, was the nightmare her life had become. Ryan, the man I believed to be responsible, respectful, and kind, had a side I never saw. He drank, heavily. And when he drank, the real Ryan came out. The shouting began first. Then the accusations. Then the slamming of doors. Then fists into walls. And eventually, into her. He controlled everything. He took her phone and blocked her old friends. He deleted her social media. She wasn't allowed to go out alone, wasn't allowed to paint, wasn't allowed to work. She became a prisoner in her own home. And worse, she blamed herself. Because that's what Ryan made her believe. Every bruise came with an apology. Every insult with a bouquet of flowers the next morning. Every night of crying was followed by a day of silence. And slowly, Emma disappeared. I had no idea. I didn't want to believe the truth. I had seen her once after the wedding, a brief visit when I was in Austin for a meeting. She wore long sleeves in the summer. Smiled too much. Laughed too loud at nothing. I convinced myself she was just adjusting. That I had made the right choice by guiding her away from Noah, towards something more stable. But in reality, I had sent her into a storm without an umbrella. There was one night, I'll never forget it, when I was lying in bed and her old bedroom door creaked open in my memory. I saw her as a child, running in after a nightmare, crawling into bed beside me, holding my hand. "Daddy, you'll always protect me, right?" she had once whispered. And I had said, without hesitation, "Always, sweetheart. Always." But I hadn't. I had chosen control over trust. My pride over her instinct. I had silenced her heart and handed her to a man who saw her not as a partner, but as property. The worst part? She never told me. She bore it alone. Cried alone. Hid the bruises, the pain, the fear, alone. And I was just here, telling myself she was fine, that she'd call when she had time, that maybe young marriages just needed space to grow. But in truth, she was withering. And I didn't see it. I didn't see it until it was almost too late. I had told myself this was just a routine trip. Another business meeting, another few days away from Seattle. But deep down, I knew this trip was different. My flight to Austin landed early, and I found myself checking my phone for Emma's number again. My thumb hovered over the call button. She hadn't answered in weeks. Every message I sent got a polite, vague reply. "I'm okay, Dad. Just busy. Ryan and I are good. Love you, talk soon." But a father knows. I had always known when Emma was truly happy. And none of her messages had that spark. Not the old Emma. Not my little butterfly. That gnawing feeling had taken root days ago and wouldn't let go. So when I found myself done early with work, I told the driver to change course. I didn't even think it through. I just needed to see her face. Maybe hug her. Maybe just remind her that she wasn't alone. As we turned onto her street, the Texas sun was starting to dip behind the houses. It painted the sky in orange and purple, and for a second, I told myself everything would be fine. Her car was parked in the driveway. A small sign of peace. I stepped out, walked up the path. My heart was racing, not with excitement, but something heavier. A weight I couldn't explain. Then I heard it. A crash. Followed by shouting. A man's voice, slurred and angry, echoing through the walls. "Don't you walk away from me, Emma." I stopped cold. My hand was inches from the doorbell. Then, her voice. Small. Frantic. Crying. "Ryan, please, you're drunk. Just stop. Please." Another thud. Something slammed. "Shut up." I said shut up. I didn't wait. I pushed the door open, it wasn't even locked. What I saw inside burned into my memory. The living room was dimly lit. Furniture was overturned. A shattered picture frame lay in pieces near the fireplace. And in the middle of that chaos, Emma. My Emma. On the floor, curled up, one arm shielding her face. Ryan stood above her, red-faced, shirt half unbuttoned, a bottle on the table behind him. His hand was midair. "Hey!" I roared. He turned, confused. "What the?" I didn't let him finish. I grabbed him by the shoulders and shoved him hard. He stumbled backwards, fell into a chair, knocking it over with a crash. He groaned, but I didn't look back. I dropped to my knees beside Emma. She looked up at me, eyes wide with disbelief. "Dad?" My throat closed. Her face was swollen, tears smeared down her cheeks, her lips slightly cut. "Emma," my voice broke. "Oh my God, what has he done to you?" She tried to speak but just cried. Gut-wrenching, body-shaking sobs. I wrapped my arms around her and pulled her in, holding her like she was 5 again, after scraping her knee on the sidewalk. "I've got you, baby. I've got you. You're safe now." "I didn't think you'd come," she whispered. "I didn't think anyone would. I'm here. I'm here now." She gripped my shirt tightly, burying her face into my chest. "He said I couldn't leave. That no one would believe me. That I was lucky he married me." I clenched my jaw. "That bastard." She shook her head slowly. "I thought I had to stay. For you. Because I wanted to make you proud." My heart cracked wide open. I pulled back, cupping her face gently. "Emma, listen to me. None of this is your fault. Not one bit. And you don't ever need to stay in pain for my pride." Her lips quivered. I thought you'd be ashamed. That you'd say, I told you to pick someone with a future." "No," I said, my voice thick. "No, sweetheart. I was wrong. I was so wrong. I thought I was protecting you. But I didn't see what you really needed. And now all I care about is getting you out of here." We stood up slowly. She limped slightly, I put my arm around her, shielding her. Ryan muttered something from the floor but I didn't even register it. I opened the door wide and helped Emma into the car. She didn't say a word during the drive. Her eyes stared blankly at the dashboard, hands trembling in her lap. Halfway to the hotel, she finally asked in a cracked voice, "What happens now?" "You stay with me," I said. "As long as you need. Until you're ready." "And if I never get ready," she whispered. "Then I'll wait," I said, without hesitation. "As long as it takes." She looked at me, for the first time in that car, with eyes not just full of fear, but a glimmer of relief. "Thank you, Dad." I reached over and squeezed her hand. "You were never alone, Emma. I just wish I'd come sooner." We spent the first 2 nights in silence. Emma didn't say much. She mostly sat by the window of the guest room in my hotel suite, wrapped in the same oversized hoodie she had worn the day I pulled her out of that house. The one with the faint bloodstain near the collar that she hadn't noticed, or didn't want to notice. I didn't push her. I brought her tea. I sat quietly nearby with my laptop open but untouched. I turned the lights low in the evening, let her pick the music, if any. But mostly, we just breathed in the silence together. On the 3rd night, she finally spoke. She was curled up on the couch, legs tucked beneath her, staring at the television though it wasn't on. "Dad?" I turned, startled but hopeful. "Yeah, sweetheart." Her voice was soft. "Can I tell you everything? Even if it's ugly?" I put the remote down and moved closer. "You can tell me anything. And nothing you say will make me love you less. Ever." She took a deep breath, like she was diving into freezing water. And then, slowly, piece by piece, she began to tell me. "It started on the honeymoon," she whispered. "The first time he shouted at me. Over nothing. I forgot to pack his watch, he said I was useless. I thought he was just stressed. I said nothing, my jaw already clenched. He'd apologize right after, she continued. Flowers. Dinner. Kisses. He cried. Told me he was afraid I'd leave him, that he loved me more than anything. And I believed him. She looked at her hands, twisting them nervously. But then it kept happening. Little things. A glass not washed. Talking to a neighbor too long. Laughing at a message from a college friend. She looked up, eyes glossy but dry. He started deleting my contacts. At first, just old boyfriends. Then college friends. Then even Aunt Lila. I didn't even realize how quiet my phone had become. Jesus, I muttered, unable to stop myself. Emma nodded faintly. He told me I didn't need anyone else. That they were jealous, or manipulative. That I was too naive to see it. She paused. Her hands were trembling. I reached over and gently held them. What about work? I asked softly. She let out a bitter laugh. I got a job at a gallery. First week, I came home excited about a compliment from my boss. Ryan didn't say a word. Then that night, he smashed the picture frame on our bedroom wall. Said I was trying to get attention from other men. I inhaled sharply, a chill running through my spine. After that, she whispered, I stopped dressing up. I stopped wearing makeup. I smiled less, spoke less. I became exactly what he wanted, small, invisible, predictable. My throat tightened. And the hitting? Her eyes flicked toward the floor. It started about 6 months in. Slaps first. Then pushing. Once, he threw a mug that just missed me. But that night, her voice caught. That night you showed up. That was the first time he really tried to hurt me. I squeezed her hands tighter. She didn't pull away. I didn't know how to leave, she said after a long pause. I kept thinking, you picked him, Dad. You said he was the right one. So if he was hurting me, maybe I was the problem. Maybe I wasn't trying hard enough. Tears welled in my eyes. I couldn't stop them anymore. Emma, my voice cracked. I am so sorry. I told you he was safe. I pushed you away from Noah because I thought I was doing the right thing. I wanted you to be secure, respected, taken care of. I know, she said quietly. But I didn't listen, I said. I didn't trust you. I thought I knew better, but I was just afraid. Afraid you'd get hurt if I didn't control it all. And look what that fear did. She looked at me then, really looked at me. Dad. I needed you to believe in me. Not protect me from love. I wiped my eyes with the back of my sleeve, swallowing the grief that was now a heavy boulder in my chest. I failed you, I whispered. And if I could go back? No, she interrupted gently. You can't go back. Neither can I. But you came. When it mattered most. You walked through that door. There was a long silence between us, but not a painful one. The kind of silence that feels like a breath after holding it too long. Then she said the last thing I expected. I still dream about Noah. I blinked. What? Her voice trembled with something like regret, or longing. Sometimes, when it's really bad, when I'm lying awake and everything feels too much, I imagine him reading to me again. Remember how he used to call me sunlight in a storm? I remember you told me once, I said quietly, that his voice made your nightmares go away. Emma nodded. He was the last place I felt safe. Before everything. I swallowed hard. Emma. She turned to me. What if I told you Noah never moved on? Her eyes widened. What do you mean? He never married. He still works in that little bookstore in Bend. I reached out. A few days ago. She stared at me in stunned silence. He cried when I told him what happened. He said he thought you didn't want him. Her voice broke. I thought you didn't want him. I was wrong, I said again. I was so wrong. But maybe this isn't too late. She looked down at her lap, silent tears falling again. But this time, they weren't just from pain. There was something else in them. A flicker. Not quite hope. But close. It had been 4 days since Emma told me everything. Since her voice cracked open and poured out all the pain she had hidden so well behind polite smiles and empty words. Since I had first held her in my arms not just as a daughter, but as someone I had unknowingly abandoned when she needed me most. We had found a fragile rhythm in those few days. She'd started eating again, little things, toast, tea, soup. She no longer sat by the window for hours. Sometimes she read. Sometimes she just sat quietly beside me, not needing to talk. It wasn't happiness, but it was something softer than survival. It was healing. Still, there was something unspoken hovering between us. Something I hadn't dared bring up yet, afraid of rushing her, of breaking whatever piece we were barely holding together. But I couldn't stop thinking about him. Noah. That name had taken root in my mind the night she first said it again, like a forgotten melody. Her voice when she said it, the way it shook, the way it softened, stayed with me longer than anything else. One evening, I finally found the courage. We were in the small kitchen of my apartment, the one I hadn't used much until now. Emma sat at the table in an oversized sweater, holding a mug of chamomile tea, her face calm but far away. I stood across from her, pretending to dry a dish I'd already dried twice. Then I set it down and said, gently, Emma, can I ask you something? She looked up. Of course. I paused, choosing my words like they were glass. Have you thought about Noah? I mean, lately. Since all of this. Her eyes widened slightly, not alarmed, but surprised. She wasn't expecting that. She blinked, then smiled faintly, though her eyes shimmered. Why do you ask? I shrugged, trying not to seem too invested, even though my heart was beating faster than I liked. Because, the way you talked about him. That night. It sounded like he was more than just a memory. Emma looked down into her tea, her thumb running in circles over the rim of the mug. She didn't speak for a moment. I gave her the silence she needed. Then she whispered, he was everything good I ever felt. Before things went dark. She lifted her gaze slowly. Noah saw me, Dad. Not the grades, not the awards, not the daughter of someone. Just me. I didn't have to be anything but myself around him. I nodded slowly. You don't have to explain. I understand now. A brief silence passed between us, soft but thick with emotion. Emma added, her voice almost inaudible, I thought I'd forgotten how he made me feel. Until I heard myself say his name again. That was all I needed to hear. I took a breath. Emma. I didn't tell you this before, because I didn't want to push. But after I brought you here. I looked him up. Her eyes widened. He still lives in Bend. He never left. Still works at that same little bookstore. I reached out, carefully. Just to ask. Just to check. She didn't blink. You talked to him? I nodded. He cried when I told him what happened to you. He said he thought you stopped loving him. That he wasn't good enough. Emma's lips trembled. I thought you didn't think he was good enough. I sat down across from her, gently reaching across the table. Emma. I was wrong. I was a fool. I confused status with character. I wanted you to be safe, but I ended up sending you away from the one person who made you feel loved. She didn't say anything for a long time. Her fingers played with the hem of her sleeve. Then, with a fragile breath, she asked, "Did he say anything else?" I smiled, softly. "He said he never stopped hoping. That he never stopped loving you. Not even for a day." She closed her eyes, and for a moment, I saw the same flicker I had seen once before, not just hope, but longing. A crack in the wall she had built around her heart. "Would you want to see him?" I asked carefully. She didn't answer right away. But when she finally looked at me, her voice didn't waver. "I don't know if I'm ready to feel everything again, but I'd like to remember what it felt like." And with that, I knew we were moving towards something better. Not because of me, not entirely, but because for the first time in years, I was walking with her instead of ahead of her. The rain came down like a whisper that morning, tapping gently against the windshield as I drove Emma to Bend. She sat beside me, silent, clutching her hands together in her lap. Her wedding ring, the one Ryan had given her, was gone. All that was left was a faint tan line on her finger, a quiet reminder of promises that had turned to bruises. Neither of us spoke much. Every so often, I'd glance sideways, just to check if she was breathing deeply, if she was still okay. Her eyes were fixed on the passing trees, but her thoughts were miles away, maybe back in Austin, or maybe years ago in Oregon, when her laughter had been brighter and Noah's name had still tasted like love. We pulled into the small parking lot beside the bookstore, Thistle and Page. It looked exactly as she'd once described it in a letter she never sent, warm, tucked away, worn with charm. Her voice was barely a whisper. "He's really here." I nodded. "He never left. He's been waiting, Emma." She didn't move. Her breath caught. "What if I can't face him? What if I broke something that can't be fixed?" "Then you walk in there and tell him that. Honestly. But you deserve to find out, don't you?" She turned slowly, searching my face. "Are you sure about this, Dad? After everything?" I reached out, gently taking her hand. "Emma, the worst mistake I ever made was thinking I knew what your happiness should look like. But this time, I'm just your driver. Your father. And I'm on your side." She gave me a shaky nod. Then she opened the door. The bell over the shop chimed as she stepped inside, and then the door closed behind her. I stayed in the car. My heart pounded with every passing second. I stared out the rain-speckled glass and watched the moments blur by. 2 minutes. 5. 10. Still no sign. Every cell in my body wanted to run in after her, to see what was happening. But I didn't. This was her moment. Not mine. And then the door opened. She stepped out slowly, and behind her came Noah. I hadn't seen him in person before. Only photos. But I recognized him immediately. He stood still, like he was afraid if he moved, she might disappear again. His eyes never left her, not for a second. Emma turned to him, and I saw her lip quiver. Her voice was soft, muffled by distance and the rain, but I could hear it through the window as if it were meant for me. "I thought you'd hate me." Noah shook his head slowly, his voice trembling. "Emma, I never stopped. I never stopped looking at the door, hoping you'd walk through it again." She looked down, tears welling in her eyes. "I married someone else. I became someone else. You don't know what I've." "I don't care," he cut her off gently. "I only care about now. And you. Just you." And then she stepped toward him. There was no kiss. No running into each other's arms. Just silence. Just her slowly leaning into his chest, and him wrapping his arms around her like he was holding something he'd lost in a fire. I looked away. I didn't want to intrude on something sacred. Later that evening, when she came back to the car, Emma's eyes were red from crying, but her voice was steady for the first time in years. "He forgave me," she said. "He didn't even hesitate." I turned to her, trying to swallow the lump in my throat. "Of course he did. He never stopped loving you. A few weeks later, she sat me down at the kitchen table. I'm divorcing Ryan. I felt my breath catch, not out of shock, but out of a deep, painful mix of relief and guilt. She went on. It won't be easy. He's already threatening to drag it out, to humiliate me. But I have to do this. Not for Noah. Not even for you. For me. You're not alone, Emma, I said, placing my hand on hers. Not this time. The divorce was messy. Ryan sent cruel messages, tried to manipulate her with old memories, gaslight her with lies. But Emma didn't break. Not this time. She stood firm. Every time she doubted herself, she'd call Noah. And he'd remind her who she was before the darkness swallowed her. 6 months later, she moved to Bend. And that spring, under a sprawling oak tree that looked like it had seen 100 love stories bloom beneath its branches, Emma and Noah were married. There were no photographers. No bridesmaids or groomsmen. Just a small group of loved ones, a few chairs, and her mother's old vinyl playing from a dusty speaker. I stood to the side, watching as my daughter, barefoot in a flowing white dress, walked toward the man she'd always loved. Her voice didn't shake during her vows. Her hands didn't tremble. And when she said, "I do," she smiled, really smiled, like light pouring through after a lifetime of storm. After the ceremony, she found me by the tree. "Dad," she said, her voice soft, "I didn't think I'd ever be this happy again." "I did," I said. "The moment you walked back into that bookstore. I knew." She hugged me, burying her face into my shoulder, and whispered, "Thank you for giving me this chance, even after everything." I held her close, closing my eyes. "No, Emma. Thank you for forgiving me." And as she walked back to Noah, hand in hand, I finally understood. Love isn't about protecting someone from pain. It's about walking through it with them, no matter how long it takes. It was a quiet Saturday morning in Seattle. The kind where mist clung to the edges of the windowpane, and the world moved slowly, like it had finally decided to exhale. I stood outside Emma's home, her new home, the one she built with Noah, and for a moment, I hesitated. The old me, the man who thought control was love and silence was safety, would have called first, would have waited for an invitation. But today, I knocked. There was no need to wait long. The door creaked open and I saw her. Emma. She was barefoot, wearing one of those old oversized shirts she used to sleep in as a teenager, her hair tied up carelessly, cheeks flushed. She looked younger than she had in years, not by age, but by spirit. By the absence of pain. "Dad," she gasped, surprised. "You didn't call." I shrugged. Felt like a good day to surprise someone. She laughed, freely, like the girl I remembered from long ago. "Well, come in. Noah's making blueberry pancakes. He burns the first batch, every single time." I stepped into the warmth of their home, and something struck me immediately, not the furniture or the smell of coffee or even the soft jazz playing from a vintage speaker. No, it was the peace. This wasn't just a house. It was a sanctuary. From the kitchen, Noah peeked his head out, smiling. "Sir. Would you like some burnt pancakes?" "Only if there's syrup," I joked, and he chuckled, disappearing back into the kitchen. Emma led me to the living room. Her paintings were everywhere now, framed, vibrant, exploding with color. Nothing muted, nothing ashamed. On one canvas, a woman stood in a field, her arms outstretched, face lifted toward the sky. On another, butterflies, dozens of them, flying toward the sun. "You painted these?" I asked, almost breathless. She nodded. "They live here now. Not in sketchbooks anymore." I ran my fingers over the edge of one frame. "They're alive." "They are," she whispered. "So am I." After breakfast, we sat outside on the porch. The clouds had parted by then, and a warm breeze rustled the wind chime sheet hung above the door. I watched as she swayed gently on the porch swing, sipping tea from a mug that read, "One day at a time." "I never thought I'd see this," I said finally, the words catching in my throat. "You, like this. Free. Happy." She turned to me, eyes soft. "I didn't think I'd ever feel this way again either." I looked down at my hands. "I almost ruined it for you. I thought I was doing the right thing, choosing what was best for you." She didn't respond right away. "I was so afraid you'd get hurt," I continued, voice cracking. "But I didn't realize I was the one hurting you the most." Her silence was gentle, not accusing. She let the words sit between us like stones. "I told you no when I should have said, 'Tell me more.' I pushed away the one person who gave you light. And I handed you off to someone I barely knew, just because he looked good on paper." Emma placed her hand over mine, firm but warm. "You made a mistake, Dad. A big one. But you also came for me. You pulled me out when I was too afraid to move. That counts for something." "I don't deserve forgiveness," I whispered. "You're not asking for it," she said. "You're living it." I blinked back tears. My little girl, once lost in silence, fear, and bruises she never spoke of, now sat beside me with strength in her eyes. She wasn't the girl who needed saving anymore. She had saved herself. "And Noah." He stepped out then, carrying a small pot of blooming lavender for the garden. "You two okay out here?" he asked, glancing between us. Emma smiled. "We're better than okay." He gave me a respectful nod, one I returned with something more, acceptance, perhaps even gratitude. Later that evening, Emma put on a record, a soft, scratchy track that reminded me of my late wife. Billie Holiday. "I'll Be Seeing You." Emma swayed to the rhythm. Then she pulled Noah into a slow dance in the center of the living room, her head resting on his chest. There were no words. Just the soft creak of the floor, the occasional breath, and the music. I sat in the corner and watched, quietly, like a man humbled by grace. Then Emma turned to me. "Come join us," she said. "For Mom." She always loved this song. I hesitated, old pride rising like a wall, but then I stood, and walked toward her, toward the song, toward forgiveness. She took one of my hands, and Noah stepped back, giving space to the two of us. Emma placed my hand on her shoulder, hers on mine, and we danced. I hadn't danced in years. I hadn't let go in years. But as we moved, slowly, gently, like two shadows learning to breathe again, I realized something. Love doesn't always shout. Sometimes it's a whisper in the dark saying, "I'm still here." And family is learning to hear that whisper, even after years of silence. My daughter has her wings again. And this time, I won't clip them. I'll just stand in the sunlight, and watch her fly. Life rarely gives us second chances, but when it does, they come quietly, through forgiveness, through love, and through the courage to change. This was not just a story about Emma. It was about a father learning that love is not about control, it's about trust. It's about listening before it's too late. And it's about having the strength to say, "I was wrong, but I'm here now." If this story moved you, if it reminded you of the power of family, healing, and second chances, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt, true-to-life stories just like this one. Your support means everything, and helps us continue sharing voices that deserve to be heard. Thank you for watching.